Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the Grand Council chamber. Above her, thousands of alien representatives sat in circular rows that reached toward the domed ceiling. Their eyes watched her with expressions ranging from boredom to open contempt. She had given the same speech 3 times before. Each time they laughed. "Honored council members," Elena began, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "Humanity has served the Galactic Council faithfully for 47 years. We have worked your mines, protected your trade routes, and died defending your colonies. We ask again for equal representation and full citizenship rights for all human worlds." A sound like clicking laughter rippled through the chamber. High Chancellor Vexarath, a tall creature with silver skin and 4 arms, leaned forward on his elevated throne. His face held something that looked like a smile, but crueler. "Ambassador Vasquez," he said, his translator making his voice sound smooth and polite. "Your species has indeed been useful, like strong animals are useful. But you must understand your place. You come from a death world, a savage planet that breeds savage creatures. We cannot allow such beings to have power in civilized space." Elena felt her hands clench into fists. She forced them to relax. "We are not savages, Chancellor. We are people. You deserve what we choose to give you," Vexarath interrupted. "This council has spoken. Request denied. Again." More laughter echoed through the chamber. Elena looked up at the thousands of aliens, seeing the same dismissive expressions she had seen for years. They would never see humans as equals. They would never stop seeing Earth as a nightmare world that somehow produced intelligent life. She turned and walked out of the chamber, her jaw tight with frustration. 3 days later, everything changed. Admiral Marcus Chen sat in the command chair of the UHNS Valiant, watching the distress signal on his screen. His dark eyes were fixed on the blinking red dot that represented the colony ship Meridian Hope. 10,000 civilians, families, children, under attack by pirates in council-controlled space. "How long until we reach them?" Marcus asked. 2 hours at maximum burn, sir," his navigation officer replied. "And the council's nearest patrol?" 16 hours away, Admiral. They've acknowledged the distress call but ordered us to maintain position." Marcus felt ice in his veins. "Ordered us to stand down? There are 10,000 people dying out there." "Yes, sir. Direct order from Council Command. They say we're not authorized to operate in this sector." For a long moment, Marcus stared at the screen. He thought about his daughter, who would be about the same age as some of those children on the Meridian Hope. He thought about the oath he took to protect human lives. Then he thought about the consequences of disobeying a direct order from the Galactic Council. His hand moved toward the comm panel. Then it stopped. "Maintain position," he said quietly. The words tasted like poison. For 14 hours, Marcus and his crew watched the signals from the Meridian Hope grow weaker. They listened to the desperate messages, the screams, the final silence. When the Council patrol finally arrived, they found 8,642 bodies floating in space. The pirates were long gone. The Council issued a statement expressing their regrets and promising an investigation. They mentioned that human ships had been nearby but properly followed protocols by not entering restricted space. That night, Marcus sat alone in his quarters, staring at the list of names. So many children. He had been 2 hours away. 2 hours, and he had done nothing. His comm panel beeped. A message from Earth. High priority. Eyes only. Marcus opened it. There was no long explanation. No political speech. Just one word in white text on a black screen. Sovereign. He understood immediately. Earth had made its decision. They were done begging for respect. Done following rules that got their people killed. Done being treated as lesser beings. Marcus stood and walked to his window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council sat in their safe worlds, convinced of their superiority. They thought humans were useful animals. Dangerous but controllable. They were about to learn they were wrong. Within hours, every human ship in the galaxy received the same message. Diplomats packed their belongings. Trade vessels changed course. Military ships began moving into formation. The recall was total and absolute. Elena watched from her apartment window as human shuttles rose from the Council's capital world. She had spent 15 years here, trying to build bridges between humanity and the galaxy, trying to earn respect through patience and diplomacy, all for nothing. Her assistant, a young man named David, entered the room. "Ambassador, our shuttle leaves in 30 minutes. Are you ready?" "I don't know if I'll ever be ready for what comes next," Elena said softly. "Do you think they'll really do it? Go to war?" Elena thought about the Meridian Hope, about the thousands of humans who had died over the years while the Council looked the other way. About every insult, every dismissal, every time they were called animals or savages. "Yes," she said, "I think we're past the point of no return." Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of his ship as the entire Terran defense fleet assembled near Jupiter. 31 warships, each one built in Earth's orbital shipyards. They looked different from Council vessels. Smaller, meaner, designed by people who understood war. "All ships reporting ready, Admiral," his first officer announced. Marcus nodded. He opened a channel to all human vessels and to every communication relay in the galaxy. What he said next would be heard across hundreds of star systems. "This is Admiral Marcus Chen of Earth's Sovereign Fleet. For 47 years, humanity has served the Galactic Council. We have followed their laws, respected their authority, and died for their interests. We asked only for basic dignity and equal rights. We were denied. 3 days ago, 10,000 human civilians were murdered while Council forces ordered us not to help them. This Council has shown us that we will never be more than slaves in their eyes. Therefore, humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Council. We claim our right to exist as free and equal beings. We demand a formal apology, reparations for our dead, and recognition of our sovereignty. You have 72 hours to respond." He paused, looking at the faces of his crew, young and old. Different colors, different backgrounds, but all human, all ready to fight for their future. "And if they refuse?" someone asked. Marcus turned back to the view screen where distant stars glittered against the black. "Then they'll learn what it really means to anger a species from a death world." Message ends. The broadcast spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. On 1,000 worlds, aliens watched with shock or anger or fear. On Earth, billions of humans watched with something that felt like hope mixed with terror. They didn't know if they could win a war against the entire galaxy, but they knew they were done being victims. High Chancellor Vexrath received the message in his private chambers. He watched it twice, his 4 hands tapping against his desk in irritation. Then he smiled. Humans were finally showing their true nature. Violent, aggressive, exactly what he always said they were. He opened a channel to the Council's military command. "Assemble an enforcement fleet. 47 ships should be sufficient. These animals need to be reminded of their place. If they resist, destroy them. It's time the galaxy saw what happens to Deathworlders who forget they're inferior." As the Council fleet began to mobilize, neither side knew that they were about to start a war that would change the galaxy forever. The Council's enforcement fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system exactly 72 hours after Admiral Chen's message. 47 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Pluto's orbit, their hulls gleaming with the proud insignias of a dozen different species. Commander Zelnoth, a veteran Zelthari officer, sat in his command chair with complete confidence. This would be over quickly. "Open a channel to the human ships," he ordered. On his view screen, Admiral Chen's face appeared. Zelnoth noticed the human looked tired. Good. They were already afraid. "Human Admiral," Zelnoth began, using the tone one might use with a misbehaving child. "The Council has rejected your demands. You will stand down your military forces, return to Council space, and submit to proper authority. If you comply within the next hour, we will show mercy. If you resist, we will crush you. Those are your only options." Marcus Chen stared back at him with those strange, forward-facing eyes. Predator eyes, Zelnoth thought with disgust. The human was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. "Commander, did you know that Earth has spent 3.5 billion years trying to kill everything that lives on it? Volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, ice ages, meteor strikes, animals that evolved specifically to hunt other animals, diseases that jump between species. Our world has thrown everything at us and we survived it all. We didn't survive by running away. We survived by fighting back, by refusing to give up, by becoming the most stubborn, dangerous species our planet could create." Zelnoth felt his neck plates rise in irritation. "Is there a point to this history lesson?" "The point," Marcus said softly, "is that you sent 47 ships to intimidate a species that evolved fighting for every single day of existence. You made a mistake, Commander, and now you're going to pay for it." The channel closed. Zelnoth laughed. "All ships, battle formation. Let's teach these animals a lesson they won't forget. The Council fleet moved forward in the standard attack pattern, a beautiful display of coordinated movement perfected over centuries. They had numbers, superior firepower, and generations of military tradition. This would be easy. Then the human ships moved, and everything Xel'Nath thought he knew about space combat changed. The Terran vessels didn't form neat lines or follow any pattern the Council recognized. They scattered like a school of fish, each ship moving independently at speeds that should have turned their crews into paste from the G-forces. Xel'Nath's tactical officer was shouting something about acceleration rates that exceeded safety limits by factors of 3 or 4. Impossible, Xel'Nath muttered. Living beings can't survive those forces, but they could. Because they came from a world with higher gravity. Because their bodies were designed to withstand punishment that would kill most species. Because evolution had built them to endure. The first human ship, a destroyer called the Indomitable, dove straight through the Council formation. Xel'Nath ordered his ships to fire. Energy beams lanced out, the standard particle weapons that had dominated galactic warfare for 1,000 years. They hit the Indomitable's shields and armor. The human ship kept coming. Shields are absorbing the damage, his tactical officer reported in confusion. Their armor composition is... I don't understand these readings. It's not standard materials. Because it's not meant for your weapons, Marcus Chen's voice came over the open channel. Our armor is designed to survive re-entry through Earth's atmosphere, to withstand meteor impacts, to take punishment that would vaporize your ships. You built your vessels for civilized warfare. We built ours to survive hell. The Indomitable fired back, not with energy beams but with solid metal slugs, accelerated to a fraction of light. Speed. Railguns. Kinetic weapons that the Council had, abandoned centuries ago as too primitive. The slugs tore through Council shields like they didn't exist. Physics didn't care about force fields. A chunk of metal moving at 50 kilometers per second carried more destructive force than any energy weapon. And it couldn't be deflected by the magnetic fields that protected against particle beams. 3 Council ships died in the first 30 seconds. Xel'Nath watched in horror as his beautiful formation collapsed into chaos. Human ships were everywhere, moving in ways that shouldn't be possible, firing weapons that bypassed every defense system the Council possessed. They fought like they had gone insane, taking risks no sane commander would allow. But they weren't insane. They were just willing to push limits that other species couldn't survive. Captain Sarah Okonkwo piloted the Indomitable through a hail of weapons fire, her heart pounding but her hands steady. Her co-pilot, Lieutenant Hayes, was calling out targets and threats, his voice quick and efficient. This was what they had trained for. This was what humans did best. They adapted. They survived. They won. Captain, we've taken damage to the port side, Hayes reported. Hull breach in sections 7 through 9. Repair teams are responding. Keep us moving, Sarah ordered. If we stop, we die. She saw a Council dreadnought ahead, easily twice the size of her ship. Its weapons were swiveling toward her. A normal commander would have pulled away, seeking safety. Sarah pushed the throttle forward and aimed straight for it. Captain? Hayes asked nervously. Trust me, Sarah said. The Indomitable accelerated directly at the dreadnought. Council ships could move fast in straight lines, but they couldn't maneuver quickly. They were built for long-range battles where ships exchanged fire from safe distances. The dreadnought tried to bring its weapons to bear, but Sarah was too close, moving too fast. She waited until the last possible second, then fired everything she had directly into the dreadnought's command section. Railgun rounds, missiles, even their point defense lasers. The massive ship's shields flickered and failed under the concentrated assault. Its bridge exploded in a ball of fire. Then Sarah pulled the Indomitable into a turn that made her vision go dark at the edges from the G-forces. She heard Hayes grunt in pain beside her. But they survived the turn, and the dreadnought was crippled behind them. All across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships took damage, but they kept fighting. They rammed enemy vessels when they ran out of ammunition. They used the cover of debris fields and radiation zones that Council sensors couldn't penetrate. They fought dirty, fought smart, and fought without mercy. Commander Xel'Nath tried to regroup his forces, but it was like herding frightened animals. His ships were designed for organized battles between civilized forces. Not this chaos, not this savagery. All ships retreat to Rally Point Delta. he ordered, his voice shaking. "We need to reform," and a human missile struck his ship's engines. The blast threw Zelnoth from his chair. Alarms screamed throughout the bridge. They were dead in space. Through his cracked view screen, he watched the human fleet regroup with impossible speed. They had lost ships too. He could see the burning wrecks drifting through space. But they had won. Somehow, against superior numbers, they had won. 4 hours after the battle began, it was over. 44 Council ships were destroyed or crippled. 3 managed to escape back to Council space. The human fleet had lost 9 vessels and taken heavy damage to most of the others. But they held the battlefield. Admiral Chen's face appeared on every working view screen in the system. He looked exhausted, sad even, but determined. "To the Galactic Council," he said, "you sent a fleet to crush us, to remind us of our place. Instead, you learned something important. You learned that Deathworlders don't surrender. We don't break. We don't know how. You can send more ships if you want. Send 100. Send 1,000. It won't change anything. We're not your slaves anymore. We're not your animals. We're free beings, and we'll fight for our freedom until our last breath." He paused, his eyes hard as steel. "You called us Deathworlders like it was an insult. Like we should be ashamed of where we come from. But we're not ashamed. We're proud. Earth made us strong. It made us survivors. And now you'll learn what that really means." The message spread across the galaxy within hours. Reactions varied wildly. Some species cheered, seeing hope that the Council could be challenged. Others trembled in fear, wondering what these violent humans might do next. And some, like High Chancellor Vexarath, felt only rage. He stood in his private chambers watching the footage of the battle for the 3rd time. His hands trembled with anger. How dare these primitives defeat a Council fleet? How dare they humiliate the greatest civilization in the galaxy? "Summon the War Council," he ordered his aide. "Mobilize the Purification Armada. Every ship. Every weapon. I don't care what it costs. These humans will be destroyed, and the galaxy will remember what happens to Deathworlders who forget their place." His aide hesitated. "High Chancellor, the Purification Armada has not been deployed in 300 years. Surely there are other options?" "Do it," Vexrath snarled, "and prepare the Worldbreaker platforms. If these animals want war, we'll give them war, and when we're done, Earth will be nothing but dust and memories." On Earth, billions watched the footage of the battle. They saw their ships fight impossible odds. They saw humans die defending their freedom. And they knew this was just the beginning. The Council would come back with more forces. They would come with fury and vengeance, but humans had faced extinction before. They had survived ice ages and plagues and every disaster their world could throw at them. They would survive this too. They had to, because the Purification Armada gathered at the edge of Council space like a dark storm. 300 warships from 12 different species, all united under one purpose: to crush humanity's rebellion. War Master Krelnak of the Krithian Empire commanded the fleet, a battle-hardened soldier who had fought in 17 campaigns. He looked at the assembled forces with satisfaction. This was not a police action or a warning. This was total war. "All ships report ready, War Master," his second-in-command announced. "Good," Krelnak rumbled. His species was large and heavily armored, evolved from herbivores who had learned to work together against predators. "We jumped to Sol system in 1 hour. Remember your orders. Disable their military forces. Occupy their homeworld. Show mercy to those who surrender, but no mercy to those who resist." The fleet jumped, tearing holes in reality to cross the distance to Earth in an instant. They emerged in the Sol system expecting a fierce battle, expecting the human fleet to defend their home desperately. Instead, they found almost nothing. "Sensor sweep," Krelnak ordered. Multiple civilian stations detected near Earth's moon and around Jupiter. Energy signatures suggest several million humans in those locations. But military vessels, the sensor officer paused. "Only 3 ships in orbit around Earth. The rest of their fleet is gone." Krelnak felt his battle plates shift uneasily. Where were the humans? They wouldn't abandon their homeworld. Would they? "War Master, we're receiving a transmission from Earth." Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen. He stood on the bridge of a ship that looked different from before. Newer, bigger. Behind him, Krelnak could see a crew working with quiet efficiency. "War Master Krelnak," Chen said. "Welcome to Sol system. As you can see, we're not here to meet you. That's because we learned something important from your last attack. You can't win a war by defending. You win by making the enemy afraid to attack in the first place. What are you talking about, human? Krelnak demanded. Chen smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. It was the smile of someone who had made a terrible decision and committed to it fully. We're talking about the fact that while you were gathering your fleet, our ships were spreading out across Council space. Right now, human strike forces are in position near 15 of your most important worlds, not your military bases, your civilian infrastructure, your trade hubs, your government centers. Krelnak felt ice in his stomach. You wouldn't dare. You brought 300 warships to destroy our home, Chen replied. What exactly did you think we wouldn't dare? You wanted to teach us a lesson about our place in the galaxy. Instead, you're about to learn what happens when you corner a predator. When you threaten everything a human loves, we don't just fight back. We make sure you can never threaten us again. The transmission ended. Krelnak immediately opened channels to Council Command. Chaos greeted him. Reports were flooding in from across Council space. Human ships were attacking trade stations, destroying military supply depots, hitting communications relays. They weren't targeting civilians, but they were systematically dismantling the infrastructure that held the Council together. And then came the worst news. A human fleet had appeared near Zelthar Prime, the Council's capital world. The seat of galactic government, the most heavily defended planet in known space. Warmaster, we're receiving new orders, his communications officer said. We're to return immediately to defend the capital. Krelnak looked at Earth, hanging peacefully in space ahead of them. They had brought enough firepower to break the planet apart. But if they did, humanity would respond by destroying Council worlds in revenge. It would mean genocide on both sides. Total war. All ships prepare to jump back to Zelthar Prime, he ordered reluctantly. The Purification Armada vanished as quickly as it had arrived, racing to defend their own home. At Jupiter, Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the UHNS Retribution, watching the Council fleet retreat. Around him, his command crew let out sighs of relief. The gambit had worked. They had convinced the Council that Earth's fleet was scattered across the galaxy, forcing them to pull back to defend their own territory. In truth, most of the human fleet was right here, hidden in Jupiter's massive magnetic field and radiation belts. The radiation was intense enough to blind Council sensors, and human ships were designed to operate in environments that would kill most species. They had been waiting for days in conditions that turned Jupiter's orbit into a death trap for anyone else. All ships begin moving into position, Chen ordered. When they figure out we tricked them, they'll be back. And this time we need to hit them hard enough that they'll think twice about coming back a third time. Lieutenant James Rodriguez sat in the cockpit of his fighter, one of 300 small attack craft hidden among Jupiter's moons. He was 23 years old, fresh from the academy, and absolutely terrified. The waiting had been the worst part. Sitting in the radiation zone for days, wondering if his ship's shielding would hold, wondering if he would live through the coming battle. All fighters, this is Flight Command, a voice came over his comm. Enemy fleet has returned. They're bringing everything this time. Nearly 500 ships now that they picked up reinforcements. Form up on your squadron leaders and prepare for launch. James felt his hands shake. 500 ships. Against what? Maybe 70 human vessels and 300 fighters? The math was wrong. They were going to die, but they were going to fight anyway. Because Earth was behind them. Because surrender meant slavery. Because that's what humans did. They fought impossible odds and somehow survived. Red Squadron, launch. The order came. James pushed his fighter forward, joining the stream of small craft emerging from Jupiter's shadow. Ahead, the Council fleet was deploying in a massive formation, ready to sweep through the system and destroy everything they found. The human fleet struck from 3 directions at once. Capital ships emerged from Jupiter's radiation belts. Fighters swarmed in from the outer moons, and missiles launched from hidden platforms scattered throughout the system. Weapons that had been pre-positioned and waiting in silence. The battle was chaos from the first second. James followed his squadron leader through a hail of defensive fire. Their target was a Council carrier that was launching its own fighters. His head rattled with voices shouting warnings, calling out targets, screaming for help. He lost track of his wingman somewhere in the confusion. A Council fighter appeared in front of him. James reacted on instinct, training taking over from fear. He fired. The enemy exploded. He didn't have time to think about it before 3 more appeared. Red 7, you've got 2 on your tail. Someone shouted that was his call sign. James threw his fighter into a turn that made his vision tunnel. The pursuing ships followed, but they couldn't match his maneuverability. Human fighters were smaller and faster, built for atmospheric combat on a world where air pressure could crush most species. In space, they were like angry insects, impossible to swat. He looped back and got behind one of his pursuers. Fired. The ship's shields collapsed under the assault of his mass driver. He was about to fire again when a massive explosion lit up the battlefield ahead. Captain Sarah Okonkwo's ship, the Indomitable, had taken catastrophic damage. James watched in horror as the destroyer, trailing atmosphere and debris, aimed itself at a Council battlecruiser. She wasn't trying to escape. She was accelerating toward the enemy ship. "All ships, this is Okonkwo." Her voice came over the general channel. "It's been an honor. Take care of Earth for us." The Indomitable, a ship that carried 300 crew members, rammed the Council battlecruiser at full speed. The explosion was visible across half the system. Both ships vanished in a ball of nuclear fire. James felt tears on his face, but he didn't have time to mourn. More enemies were coming. He kept fighting. The battle raged for 6 hours. Human ships took terrible casualties, but they gave worse than they got. They used nuclear weapons, something the Council considered too dangerous and unpredictable. They deployed autonomous drones that hunted enemy ships without mercy. They used electromagnetic pulse weapons that overloaded the neural interfaces most alien species used to connect with their ships. And they fought in the radiation zone around Jupiter, a place where most species suffered from sensor blindness and system malfunctions. For humans, it was just another hostile environment to survive. When the Council fleet finally broke and retreated, they left behind more than 200 destroyed warships. The human fleet had lost 39 ships and countless fighters. The cost was terrible. The victory was real. Admiral Chen stood on his damaged bridge looking at the casualty reports. Nearly 20,000 dead. Captain Okonkwo and her entire crew, Lieutenant Rodriguez and 400 other fighter pilots. Thousands more wounded. And this was just one battle. "Sir, we're getting reports from our strike teams across Council space," his first officer said quietly. "Operation Ragnarok is proceeding as planned, but, Admiral, we've lost 5 more ships in those operations. And now we're getting intelligence that the Council is mobilizing world-breaker weapons. Planet killers. They're planning to destroy Earth even if it costs them everything." Marcus looked out at the stars, at the wreckage floating in space, at Jupiter's massive form hanging in the distance. The intelligence came through coded channels, delivered by a sympathetic alien who risked everything to warn humanity. The Council was building world-breaker platforms in orbit around 3 different star systems. Ancient weapons, banned by treaty, for 500 years now being assembled in secret. Each platform could crack a planet's crust, turning a living world into a dead rock. Earth had 96 hours before the platforms reached firing position. Admiral Marcus Chen gathered his command staff in the war room of the Retribution. Holographic displays showed the locations of the world-breaker platforms, the Council's military deployments, and the scattered human forces across the galaxy. The math was brutal. They didn't have enough ships to destroy the platforms and defend Earth. "We need to end this war," Marcus said quietly. "Not just win a battle. End it completely. If we let the Council regroup, they'll keep coming. They'll keep building weapons to destroy us. We need to take away their ability to make war." "You're talking about attacking Zelthar Prime," his first officer said, "the most defended planet in the galaxy." "I'm talking about cutting off the head of the snake," Marcus replied. "The Council leadership is on that planet, their central command, their political power. If we capture or destroy it, the Council collapses. Their member species will be too busy arguing about succession to coordinate attacks against us." "Sir, we'd need every ship we have," another officer protested. "That leaves Earth undefended." Marcus looked at the display showing his homeworld, blue and green and beautiful, billions of people depending on him to make the right choice. Earth has planetary defenses, shield generators, ground-based weapons. If the Council sends ships there while we're gone, our people will have to hold. But if we don't do this, those world-breaker platforms will fire in 4 days. Then none of it matters. The room was silent. Finally, his first officer nodded. Operation Ragnarok. All or nothing. All or nothing, Marcus agreed. 20 hours later, the human fleet jumped into the Zelthar system. 62 warships, thousands of fighters, and every marine they could spare. They emerged from faster than light. Travel already moving at combat speed, already firing. The defense fleet around Zelthar Prime numbered over 200 ships. But they weren't expecting an attack on their capital. They weren't expecting humans to be crazy enough to strike at the heart of Council power while their own planet was under threat. Marcus watched the tactical display as the battle unfolded. Human ships drove through the Council lines like spears, targeting specific vessels and ignoring the rest. They weren't trying to win a traditional battle. They were trying to create a corridor to the planet. "Breaching ships, prepare for launch," he ordered. 8 specialized vessels built for exactly this mission broke away from the main fleet. They were armored like tanks and shaped like bullets, designed for one purpose: orbital insertion through hostile fire. Each carried 500 Marines in powered armor. The Zelthari defense forces tried to stop them. Energy weapons hammered the breaching ships. Missiles streaked toward them. But human engineers had studied every recording of Council weapons for 47 years. They knew how to build armor that could survive. 6 of the 8 breaching ships made it through. They hit the atmosphere at speeds that turned their hulls red hot. The G-forces inside would have killed most species. Human Marines, strapped into crash harnesses and wearing armor designed to handle Earth's punishing gravity, gritted their teeth and endured. Sergeant Maria Santos felt every second of the descent. The ship shook like it was being torn apart. Her armor's medical systems injected her with drugs to keep her conscious under the crushing deceleration. Around her, 49 other Marines prepared for combat. 60 seconds to impact. The pilot's voice crackled over the comm. Maria checked her weapon for the 3rd time, a rifle that fired explosive rounds heavy enough to punch through most materials. In Earth's gravity, the weapon would be almost impossible to carry. Here on Zelthar Prime, with its 0.7 G, she felt almost superhuman. The breaching ship crashed through the roof of the Council's government complex and came to a violent stop inside the Grand Chamber itself. The rear hatch blew open with explosive charges. Maria was first out, her rifle up, scanning for threats. The Council members were still there, hundreds of them, frozen in shock. They had been in the middle of an emergency session when the ceiling exploded. Now they stared at the armored humans pouring into their sacred hall. "Nobody move!" Maria shouted through her armor's external speakers. "This building is now under the control of Earth's military forces. Resist, and you will be considered hostile combatants." For a moment, nothing happened. Then High Chancellor Vexrath stood from his throne, his forearms spread wide. "You dare?" he hissed. "You dare violate this chamber? You will be executed for this, all of you. Your entire species will be—" "Will be what?" Maria interrupted. "Destroyed? You already tried that. You sent 500 ships to destroy Earth and we beat you. You built world-breaker platforms and we're here anyway. You don't get to make threats anymore, Chancellor. You lost." More Marines poured into the chamber from other breaching ships that had landed throughout the government complex. The sound of weapons fire echoed from other parts of the building as security forces tried to resist and were quickly overwhelmed. In orbit, Admiral Chen watched the tactical feed. The Council's defense fleet was in chaos. Some ships were trying to break through to protect their government. Others were pulling back, unwilling to fire on their own capital. The human fleet exploited the confusion, destroying orbital defense platforms and securing position over the city. "Ground team reports the Council chambers are secure," his communications officer announced. "They have captured High Chancellor Vexrath and 43 other senior officials." Marcus allowed himself a small breath of relief. Phase 1 was complete. Now came the harder part. "Broadcast on all channels," he ordered. "Time for the galaxy to learn the truth." The message went out across every communication network in Council space. Admiral Chen's face appeared on billions of screens across hundreds of worlds. "People of the galaxy," he began. "For the past month, your leaders have told you that humanity is dangerous, that we are savages who must be controlled or destroyed. They have painted us as monsters. But I want to show you something. The screen. switched to recordings pulled from the Council's own secure archives. Files that had been classified for centuries. Marcus had found them in the government database during the assault. The recordings showed first contact with other species from Deathworlds, beings that had evolved on harsh planets, who showed signs of being too aggressive, too dangerous. The recordings showed what the Council did to them, how they were quietly exterminated, whole civilizations erased because they made the Council afraid. 17 species, Marcus said, as the images played. 17 civilizations that might have contributed to the galaxy, all destroyed by the Council you trusted to keep you safe, and we were supposed to be number 18. The reaction across the galaxy was immediate and explosive. On dozens worlds, protests erupted. Member species demanded answers. Some of the Council's own military commanders refused to follow further orders. In the Council chambers on Zelthar Prime, Vexrath watched the broadcast on a screen, his face twisted with rage. "You have destroyed nothing," he said to the Marines guarding him. "You have only proven that you are exactly what I said you were. Dangerous, violent, uncontrollable. The galaxy will see this and they will fear you. They will demand your destruction." Maria Santos looked at the former High Chancellor. "Maybe. Or maybe they'll remember that we had the power to destroy your capital, and we didn't. We could have dropped kinetic strikes from orbit and turned this city into a crater. We could have killed every council member, but we didn't. We captured you instead. We followed the rules of war even when you broke them. Because we're not the monsters you made us out to be." Vexrath had no answer to that. Over the next 72 hours, the galaxy transformed. 23 species formally withdrew from the Council, declaring their independence. Others demanded immediate reform. The Council's military structure collapsed as different species fleets pulled back to defend their own interests. The Worldbreaker platforms were seized by neutral forces before they could be activated. Admiral Chen's fleet, joined now by ships from other species who had grown tired of Council tyranny, secured the Zelthar system. But the cost had been terrible. 54,000 humans were dead, entire ships and their crews lost, fighter squadrons that no longer existed, Marines who would never come home. Marcus stood in the Grand Chamber, now converted into a military command post, looking at the names scrolling across a display. So many dead. So many families destroyed. And for what? For the right to be treated as equals. For the freedom to exist without someone's boot on their neck. Ambassador Elena Vasquez arrived 3 days after the battle. She looked around the occupied council chambers with mixed emotions. This was where she had spent years trying to negotiate peace. Now it was a conquered building. "You did it," she said to Marcus. "You won the war." "I didn't want to win a war," Marcus replied quietly. "I wanted respect, dignity, peace. Instead, I got thousands of my people killed and turned humanity into the thing we were trying to prove we weren't. Conquerors. No." Elena say the Yalaran orbital habitat floated in neutral space, a massive ring of metal and glass that had served as a meeting place for diplomats for 300 years. Now it hosted the most important negotiations in galactic history. Representatives from 68 species gathered in the Great Hall arguing, debating, and trying to build something new from the ashes of the old order. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the human delegations table, looking out at the assembled beings. Some watched her with curiosity, others with fear, a few with open hostility. She understood all of those reactions. Humanity had broken the galaxy's most powerful government through violence. Now they had to prove they wanted peace. "The Deathworld Accord," she began, her voice carrying through the hall's audio systems, "is not about human dominance. It's about equality. For too long the Council decided which species deserved rights and which deserved slavery, which deserved protection and which deserved extermination. That system is dead. We're here to build something better." A Zelthari representative stood, his silver skin catching the light. "Better? You invaded our capital. You hold our leaders prisoner. You call this peace?" "I call it justice," Elena replied calmly. "Your leaders ordered the construction of planet-killer weapons aimed at Earth. They systematically destroyed 17 other civilizations. They created a system where might made right, and then complained when someone proved mightier. You want to talk about invasion? Let's talk about the 47 years humanity spent under Council occupation. Let's talk about the 8,742 civilians who died because your ship stood by and watched. The Zilthari sat down, but his expression remained hostile. Another representative stood.
Kelvara of the Yalaran, a species known for their neutrality and wisdom.
What guarantees can humans offer? How do we know you won't become what the Council was? Elena had expected this question. It was the core issue that would determine whether peace was possible. We propose a new galactic assembly with equal representation for all member species. No species gets special status. No species gets veto power. Decisions are made by majority vote, with protections for minority rights built into the charter. And military force? Kelvara pressed. Who controls weapons? Who enforces peace? A joint peacekeeping force, Elena said. Ships and personnel from multiple species serving together. No single species can dominate. And we propose complete transparency. All military deployments, all weapons development, all major decisions will be public record. No more secret programs, no more hidden agendas. The debate continued for hours, then days, then weeks. Every species had concerns. Every delegation had demands. But slowly, painfully, they found common ground. The trial of High Chancellor Vexrath took place in a specially constructed court on the Yalaran habitat. The judges came from 5 neutral species. The prosecutors included representatives from 3 civilizations that had been oppressed under Council rule. Vexrath's defense attorneys argued that he had been protecting the galaxy from dangerous species. The prosecution presented evidence, recordings of massacres, documents ordering the extermination of entire worlds, plans to build weapons of genocide. The list of crimes was so long that it took 3 days just to read the charges. Admiral Marcus Chen testified on the 4th day. He sat in the witness stand looking older than he had 6 months ago. The war had aged him. Did you order the attack on Zelthar Prime? The prosecutor asked. Yes, Marcus said simply. Why? Marcus looked at Vexrath sitting in the defendant's chair. Because the Council was building weapons to destroy Earth. Because they had already killed thousands of my people. Because they gave us no choice. We could fight or die. We chose to fight. Some would say your response was excessive, the defense attorney interjected. You could have negotiated. Instead, you invaded a capital world. We tried negotiating for 47 years, Marcus replied, his voice hard. It got us nowhere. You can't negotiate with someone who fundamentally believes you're an animal. You can't reason with someone who thinks genocide is an acceptable solution. Sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to hit back hard enough that they can't get up again. The defense attorney pressed forward. And now that you've proven you can hit back, what's to stop you from becoming the next tyrant? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Pain, he said finally. Loss. The memory of every person who died under my command. I remember their names. All of them. Every captain who went down with their ship. Every Marine who didn't come home. Every fighter pilot who vanished in combat. I carry that weight, and I never want to carry more. He looked directly at the cameras broadcasting the trial across the galaxy. We didn't fight this war because we wanted power. We fought because we wanted to survive, to exist without fear, to raise our children in a galaxy that saw them as people, not monsters. Now that we've won, we just want peace, real peace. The kind where everyone has a voice and no one lives in fear. The verdict came 3 weeks later. Vexrath and his inner circle were found guilty of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against sapient life. The sentence, life imprisonment, not execution. Elena had argued for this. She said that killing them would make them martyrs. Letting them live to see the better galaxy they had tried to prevent would be a more fitting punishment. Not everyone agreed with mercy. Many wanted blood. But the court's decision stood. The Deathworld Accord was signed 4 months after the war ended. 68 species joined the new Galactic Assembly. 23 had been part of the old council but chose reform over resistance. 45 were newly independent or had never been part of any galactic government. The treaty included provisions that changed everything: equal representation for all species, ban on planet killer weapons and weapons of mass destruction, joint peacekeeping forces with mandatory mixed crews, transparent military spending and deployment, protection for developing civilizations from exploitation, reparations for species harmed by the old council, and a special provision: recognition that species from harsh worlds deserved the same rights and respect as any other. The signing ceremony took place on Earth. It was the first time most alien species had visited a death world. Many were terrified. Their environmental suits beeped warnings about the gravity, the atmospheric pressure, the aggressive microorganisms, but they came anyway. Elena stood on the stage in Geneva, looking out at the assembled delegates. Behind them, through the building's massive windows, Earth's mountains rose toward the sky. Beautiful and deadly and home. Today we make a promise, she said, that no species will face extinction for being different, that no civilization will be destroyed for coming from a harsh world, that strength doesn't mean tyranny, and peace doesn't mean submission. Today we choose to be better than we were. She signed the document first, her hand steady. Then each delegate came forward, adding their mark to history. Admiral Marcus Chen watched from the back of the hall. He had refused a seat on the stage, saying he was a soldier, not a politician. But Elena had made sure he was there. He needed to see this, needed to know that the deaths hadn't been for nothing. After the ceremony, he walked through Geneva's streets. People recognized him and kept their distance, not sure if he wanted to be approached. He found a quiet park and sat on a bench, looking at the mountains in the distance. A young woman approached hesitantly. She wore a military uniform with the insignia of the new Joint Peacekeeping Force, human and alien badges side by side. Admiral Chen? She asked. Just Marcus now, he said. I retired 2 months ago. I'm Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez. My brother was James, fighter pilot. He died at Jupiter. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He remembered the name. Red 7, 23 years old. I'm sorry, he said, the words feeling inadequate. I wanted to thank you, Sarah said. James used to send me messages. Right before the war, he was scared. He didn't think we could win. But he said if we didn't fight, his future kids would grow up as slaves. He said some things were worth dying for. She pulled out a photo showing a young man with a bright smile. James Rodriguez before the war. Before the fear and the fighting and the fire, he got his wish, Sarah continued. His sacrifice meant something. Kids today will grow up free. Human and alien living together, learning together. He died for that. You all did. And I wanted you to know, we're not going to waste it. My generation, we're going to build the galaxy he fought for. Marcus looked at her young face, so much like her brother's, and felt tears on his cheeks. Make it good, he said quietly. Make it worth what they paid. We will, she promised. 3 years after the war ended, the first joint military academy opened on Mars. Human and alien cadets trained together, learning each other's languages, cultures, and fighting styles. The facility was designed to accommodate species with different environmental needs. There were high-gravity areas for humans and low-gravity zones for species from gentler worlds. Instructor Chen taught military history and tactics. He had been surprised when they asked him, but Elena convinced him. Someone needs to teach them why we fought, she said, and how to make sure we never have to fight that way again. On his first day, an alien cadet asked the question he had been expired.